Welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. I'd like to talk about mild fatigue, sleep, and depression. Now, I began the whole conversation about sleep in the session prior, and I made reference to the fact that there is this unique relationship that exists between our ability to rest and recover and repair and how fatigued we are and any feeling of depression, anxiety, worry, or mental health. You see, the quality of our sleep, the timing and when we sleep, and the quantity of our sleep come together to create what I call a beautiful part of that nature and how nature works with us. I was speaking to my beloved yesterday, and I made reference to something that I think is worth sharing. Irrespective of your preferences by regards to belief, it's important to recognize that we live in this beautiful universe. There are things that we cannot explain, things that occur around us. There are things that we have some control over, and there are things we do not have any control over. But as we look around nature and we observe the beauty and the eccentricities, both in the animals and in plants and landscapes, we have to admit that there is some intelligence that exists somehow. And so in speaking to my beloved, I said, nature is intelligent. The universe is intelligent. We as human beings, we are intelligent. It's the two intelligences working together in harmony to create something beautiful. Whenever we feel as though we are in a state of depression, in a state of anxiety and worry, it is an indication that you're out of sync with what the universe wishes for you and wants for you. There's several ways to come to that conclusion. Some of it you do by elimination to get to the bottom of what the issue might be. Along what I call the vertical of the physical, sleep plays a huge role. Sometimes I am fatigued. As I speak to you today, I am fatigued. I'm tired, but I'm not fatigued by virtue of something in my psyche. I'm fatigued because I did not have enough sleep yesterday. You see, modern Western people, man and woman, we are sleep deprived. I am regularly in a state of sleep deprivation. As a matter of fact, this is something fascinating. I think perhaps it's a part of conditioning. When I worked in the city, I would do 15 to sometimes 17, 18 hours every single day. I would wake up at 5, I'll be in the office just before 6. I'll be home for about 9:45, and I'll be asleep at roughly 11:45. On average, I had about 5 hours of sleep. For whatever reason, I had the ability to function. As I look back, I think to myself, how silly could you have been? The body keeps the score, but the body's also conditioned. And last night I found out, for some reason, I could not sleep properly. And obviously, I suffer for it today. Now, I seem to have found a useful lifestyle preference and choice that gives me some additional benefits, such as, and I'll be very open about this, at roughly about 6:30 every morning, as soon as I get to my place of awakening, despite when I wake up, I immerse myself into what most people call a cold plunge, an ice bath, but water temperatures close to 0, sometimes -2 or -1. That clears your sinuses. It also wakes you up. So even when I have very little sleep, I get the boost of the cold plunge and the cold bath and exposure to that temperature. And that gives me a charge and gets me through half the day. And then the rest, I flounder. I'm floundering from roughly about 1. In any case, the core reason I'm floundering is because I haven't had enough sleep. The average person gets about 7.5 hours of sleep every day versus 9 hours. We should be getting more in the winter, especially, even going as far as 10 or 11, and less in the summer. Because by nature, and the way nature designed things, or rather, that's a fallacy, the way nature intended for things to work is you live with the seasons. In the summer, you wake up early and you hunt, you harvest, but in the winter, you hibernate and you rest. Our bodies are very forgiving with youth. The youth plays this, there's this innocence of youth, but we cannot do that for a long time, and therefore we have to learn about the importance of sleep. The quality of sleep is particularly key. The quantity of sleep is key, but I like to talk about when we sleep, and this connects to the whole concept of your circadian rhythm. I said before, we've been evolved to sleep when it's dark and to awake when it's light. Sleep is a form of hibernation for repair, for restoration, for recovery, but more importantly for any damage we've caused, to have an opportunity for the dead cells or the rogue cells or the damaged cells to get themselves back. We sleep at night, but if we and when we can, we should have what we call daytime naps, power naps, some people call those. I've always struggled with the power naps, but for those who can do it, I think I highly recommend it. I think about 2 or so years ago, I found myself, because I was having 4.5, 5 hours sleep every day. During the lockdown, I found, even though I was still working from home, that at roughly about 12 noon, I'll be overwhelmed with this. I mean, it's almost as though the goddesses of sleep have just arrived in my space. And for 15 minutes, I would have a power nap, and I would wake up and I would be ready to go again. We need sleep. Ideally, we should be sleeping from about 9:30 to about 6:30 a.m., 9:30 p.m. to 6:30. And again, that would change. In the summer period, you might wake up at 8 or 7:30, and you might go to bed maybe even at 7:30 p.m. or 8. In the winter, we find actually that we're pushed towards going to sleep earlier and waking up much later. You see, an hour of sleep before midnight is equivalent to 2 hours, is worth rather 2 hours once it goes past midnight. Think about this. You have 12 hours, split the whole day into two, 12 hours on either side, 12, 12. 12, 12, you have equality. There's no difference between both. But if I lose 1 hour during the daytime, it means I've gifted 1 hour to the other side. So then I suddenly have 11 against 13. It's a 2 hour difference. And therefore, every hour prior to bedtime, midnight, counts. It's huge. So that 1 hour of extra sleep, getting to bed earlier, it pays huge dividends. Now, when we talk about circadian rhythm, and you might be thinking, what does this have to do with depression? Well, it has everything to do with depression, as I will explain very shortly. Most people believe, wrongly, I should say, that stimulation from computers and laptops and movies and films is what keeps people from switching off. In many ways, it's not the light that falls on the eyes that causes us not to fall asleep. It's actually the light that falls on the skin that matters more than the light that falls on the eyes. See, light falling on the skin, not your eyes, is what causes the whole melatonin production process to begin. It switches off melatonin production. That creates the hormonal responses for melatonin to stimulate the pituitary gland, which activates this whole beautiful mechanism with regards to your thyroid. Now, 2 sessions prior, I think 2 or 3 sessions prior, I talked about the importance of your thyroid gland. And I made reference to the importance of getting your tests done. So you can test your TSH, you can test your free thyroxine T4, and you can test your free T3. Now think about this sequence. The light switches off melatonin production. That creates the hormonal responses in your body, which leads to melatonin stimulating the pituitary gland, which then produces TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, and that occurs at midnight. So think about this. If you were to go to sleep earlier, you've had enough sleep, both REM and non-REM, before this process begins at midnight. It peaks at midnight. This then stimulates to produce your T4, your thyroxine, your free T4, which spikes at 4 a.m. in the morning. This is then converted to the active thyroid in the body, the active thyroid hormone in the body, which spikes at 5 a.m. in the morning. Let's go backwards. 12, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning. The body is working in a fascinating way, whether you say due to environment or due to biology or your innate needs, it doesn't really matter. But the point being is that there are certain things that are happening. That at 4 a.m. in the morning, you have a conversion process, and at 5 a.m. you have a peak conversion process. And T3 is what kicks in your adrenals. And this creates this adrenaline release. We have adrenaline being released and cortisol and DHEA, which is what wakes you up. You see, the body's fascinating, you know. In the hunter-gatherer days, there were certain things that happened. And evolution, biology, is always looking out for us. The body wants to wake you up at a certain time, which is why most people will advise you shouldn't sleep with alarm clocks. You should allow the body to wake you up naturally. And this is where the whole depression and anxiety comes into play. What happens if that cycle of, you know, your pituitary glands and your T4 and your T3 and cortisol and adrenaline, cortisol and DHEA are not in sequence? It means that you are out of balance. And therefore, in 2 sessions or 3 sessions prior, I make reference to how you can check via your blood tests to see that you are in the right reference and personal ranges. Because if you are not, then it means there's a possibility that your thyroid stimulating hormones either is not kicking up at 12 midnight peak to produce the TSH, which means that there's no stimulation then to produce your T4, or there might be, which could then mean that the active ingredient, your thyroid hormones, T3, is not spiking at 5. So you find actually that most people who have thyroid issues, or who are underactive thyroid, who have an underactive thyroid, hypothyroid, have a delayed circadian rhythm. They can't go to sleep at the right time, and they struggle to wake up because of this out of sequence. Now, this is where depression and fatigue and worry and stress and anxiety comes into play. Imagine you had a normal job, 9 to 5, and you find that you can't drop off to sleep until 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, and you have to wake up at 7 to get ready for work. But, you know, your THS is not working in the cycle, and your T4 and your T3 are not connected, and therefore your body doesn't create adrenaline, cortisol, or DHEA, and so you find you're waking up at 10 in the morning. You're 3 hours late. You wake up frustrated, you've not had a great night's sleep, and now you have the day ahead of you with all of its eccentricities, including, I guess, your boss you have to contend with when you walk into the office. You have issues whereby people are no longer looking to you as someone who's reliable. Projects that you were good at doing are taken away from you and given to other people, so you start to get a sense of a loss of identity in the team. You feel as though you're not reliable. You know you're capable, but for whatever reason, your thyroid is out of balance. Your adrenals are not working perfectly well, and therefore you're performing below your potential. You know you can do better, but you cannot stop what is going on with you. Again, it's important to do the subjective and the objective assessment and observations and do the tests, because that will give you the clinical scope, a biochemical scope for whether you should be exploring the use of granulars um, to help ensure that all those parts of the system are regulated together. For those who are not aware of this knowledge, you will feel as though something is wrong with you. Wherever your energy and your focus goes, energy flows. And the more you look to yourself as being inadequate, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So suddenly it becomes a mental issue because you're overthinking. The body's not helping you. You're not sleeping well. You're not resting well. You're not recovering well. In addition to that, you're not performing at your best. It can all change. Whether you're generally anxious, whether you are fatigued, whether you feel depressed. Get to a clinician or professional, someone who can help you. Make observations to your sleep. As a matter of fact, we know about the quality, as this is where I end today's session. The quality of sleep comes in two parts, your non-REM and your REM. And we know that you start off sleep in non-REM. This is where you're collecting all the thoughts of the day, the things to happen, and your mind, your body, your brain is trying to file things in the right way. More importantly, so that you can solve problems as you rest. Over time, as you go into sleep, you move from your non-REM to your REM, which occurs in, say, every 90 minutes. And what we're trying to do is get you into a REM state of sleep that is long enough so that even if you fall out from REM, you go back into REM. And that process is what gives you good quality sleep. To do that requires a combination of several things. Making sure that light is used to your advantage and doesn't serve to hinder you from having what you wish. But more importantly, making sure that you're not overthinking things. You're not working till very late in the day. Relationally and emotionally, you're not in a place of chaos and anxiety, and there is no spiritual battle in your heart, whether that be between you and your family, you and friends, you and your boss, you and your environment, you and your community, so that you're free. You have peace in your heart just before you sleep. Because if you do, the likelihood that you're trying to contend with adversaries or things that are not of good report is much lower. You see, the great writer Paul said, that whatever is good, and whatever is praiseworthy, whatever is kind, whatever is noble, whatever is humble, think on those things. So I would suggest to you, in a way of encouraging you to perhaps to make that shift, think about things that make you happy. It might be looking backwards at your successes, pictures, things that you've achieved, to stimulate and remind you about the positives in your life. For some other people, it might just be a gratitude letter you write to yourself, or gratitude journal, where you write 3, 6, 10 things that have occurred in that particular day that you're grateful for. It might also be you just sending out love, sending a prayer, or meditating, but being in a state of resonance with nature, in a beautiful state, before sleep. Because what this does is it helps you displace negative ideas and thoughts and worry prior to you walking into the sanctuary of your sleep focus. I hope today's session has been useful.